This video is brought to you by Jewel of the Indigo Isles, written by Paizo veterans Patrick Rennie, Ron Lundeen, and Linda Zayas Palmer. Jewel of the Indigo Isles includes 7 new playable ancestries and enough adventure to take players from 1st to 11th level. Order now at battlezoo.com. Hey everybody, Dave here with another Pathfinder rule reminder for you, and today we're going to be talking about extra weapon damage dice and effects that modify other things based on the number of weapon damage dice. The most likely source for extra weapon damage dice will most likely be striking runes that are etched on that weapon, but there are some other feats and ability that can do this as well. For example, Power Attack can add an extra weapon damage die, and also the Fatal trait that Picks have can add an extra weapon damage die when they critically hit with those weapons. Now, there are some effects within the game that are based upon the number of weapon dice that are rolled for an attack. One such example would be Vengeful Hatred. This is a first level ancestry feat available to dwarves where they designate a favored enemy type, and whenever they hit that enemy, they deal a number of extra points of damage equal to the weapon damage dice that are rolled. So common thinking would be, well, if I have a weapon with a striking rune and I power attack with it, I'm going to be rolling 3 weapon damage dice on that attack. If I have Vengeful Hatred, that means I add 3 points of damage to that total as well. But unfortunately, it's not quite as simple and clear as you would hope it to be. Because if we check out page 279 in the core rulebook, there's this little shaded sidebar on counting damage dice. And let's take a look at what it says. It says, effects based on a weapon's number of damage dice include only the weapon's damage die plus any extra dice from a striking rune. They do not count extra dice from abilities, critical specialization effects, property runes, weapon traits, or the like. So when you see one of these abilities, like Vengeful Hatred, that says you do bonus damage based on the number of weapon dice, you don't count all of the weapon dice that are rolled for that attack. It only counts the initial damage die for the weapon and any from striking runes. Anything from other things like Weapon Surge, Brutal Finish, any of those other abilities do not count. So let's take a look at this with a number of different little scenarios, and for each of these scenarios we're going to be using a dwarf with the Vengeful Hatred feat, and they're going to be hitting an orc who is their favorite enemy per that feat, and we're just going to be ignoring strength modifiers for this. Let's just try to keep it nice and simple and focus on the weapon damage. So for our first scenario, the dwarf has a battle axe, he swings it, he hits an orc with it. That battle axe deals 1d8 damage, so the total damage here would be 1d8 plus 1, because Vengeful Hatred is going to give a plus 1 per weapon damage die that is rolled. 1d8 plus 1 would be the total there, plus their strength modifier. For the second scenario, we're just going to add a striking rune to that battle axe, and if the dwarf was to hit an orc with it, then they would be dealing 1d8 damage for the axe, and then they would get a second damage die because of the striking rune, making it 2d8 damage for a total of 2d8 plus 2, because Vengeful Hatred gives you plus 1 per damage die, and plus whatever this dwarf's strength modifier might be. Now let's take it a step further, and let's say that same dwarf using the battle axe with a striking rune uses Power Attack. So they hit with that is going to do 1 die of damage for the axe, it's going to do a second die of damage for the striking rune, it's going to do a third damage die for Power Attack. That's a total of 3d8. But the bonus from Vengeful Hatred will not be 3, even though there's 3 damage dice being rolled. It's only going to be a plus 2, because again, under counting damage dice, you only count the 1 die for the weapon and any striking runes. You do not include any other effects for the purposes of counting damage die for effects like Vengeful Hatred. So again, for that example of the dwarf using Power Attack with a battle axe that has a striking rune, the total is going to be 3d8 plus 2 damage for Vengeful Hatred plus whatever their strength modifier might be. And for our last example, we're going to say that this dwarf is using a great pick with no runes instead of his battle axe. He uses power attack and critically hits with it. So a power attack critical hit with a great pick against an enemy that is vulnerable to Vengeful Hatred. So first things first, the great pick starts with a d10, 1d10 weapon die. The fatal trait turns that into a d12. And the fatal trait also says that on that critical hit, you add another die. So we're now at 2d12 damage, 2 weapon dies, and they're d12s. Now power attack adds another weapon die. This added weapon die is going to inherit that d12. It's going to be a d12 instead of a d10 because the base weapon die was changed from a d10 to a d12. So we're now at 3 weapon dice of damage and it's 3d12. Now, Vengeful Hatred is only going to add +1 to that total, not +3, because it's only going to get credit for the initial weapon die. The Fatal Trait does not grant any extra damage for Vengeful Hatred. The Power Attack does not grant any extra damage for Vengeful Hatred either. So that's going to make it right now 3d12 plus 1, but because this is a critical hit, we got to think about how do we double our damage here. And no, we would not just take 3d12 plus 1 and double it, because the extra fatal die would not be doubled. So our final calculation here for that dwarf who power attacks with a great pick and critically hits their target that is susceptible to Vengeful Hatred would be 2d12 plus 1 for Vengeful Hatred, only 1 for Vengeful Hatred, plus whatever their strength modifier is. That total would be doubled, and then on top of that total, you would add the 1d12 extra die from Fatal, because you do not double any dice that are contingent upon there being a critical hit in the first place. If that's not if that is not familiar, that's not clear, don't worry, I'll leave links in the description that really dive into how you handle doubling on critical hits. But that's it in a nutshell. Hopefully those 4 different scenario examples help explain what we're getting at here. The bottom line is, again, because of the text on page 279 about counting damage dice, whenever you encounter an effect that gives bonus damage based on the number of damage dice rolled, you do not count all of those dice, you only count the initial weapon damage dice and anything that comes from a striking rune. So that's it for today. If you have any suggestions for future rule reminder videos, please let me know in the comments. And as always, I want to take a quick second to say thank you to everybody out there who supports me, whether that's through clicking the like button, subscribing to the channel, leaving your comments, leaving your suggestions, sharing the videos with your friends, subscribing to the Patreon. I really appreciate everything you folks do to support me and this channel. And with that, thanks for watching, take care, and happy gaming.